So Taka Carlson didn't know what to do with his time again, so he tried to invite a new person, a new, basically, I think an anti-Semite, who spends all her time basically trying to attack Israel for its existence. We're talking about Mother Agapia Stephanopoulos. First time I'm hearing about her, but apparently she was or she is somewhat prominent in the region or sort of in her community. She's an Orthodox Christian, and she went on Tucker Carlson to talk about the supposed Christian persecution in the state of Israel. At some point, it seemed to imply, and even in the sort of the so-called Palestinian territories, or what she called Palestine. So today we'll cover that. We have a bunch of clips we'll be able to watch. But before that, before we go to the topic, apparently Hamas has accepted a ceasefire deal, has dropped many of its demands. Now this doesn't seem like it's final yet, since there is a bit of a uproar in the Netanyahu's government, especially from Itamar Ben-Gvir, that basically, if this deal is as is, would be a partial deal. So it wouldn't be the full thing. So already there are some disruptions when it comes from the government and also the people. People are basically saying Netanyahu should accept this deal, since Hamas is so gracious with dropping of its demands. We won't cover it much, since I think it's better to wait to see more, so we'll most likely cover it today. But maybe we can just go for quick thoughts. Stuart, what do you think of this? I think both of you have found out about this like 5 minutes ago, so I'm
Yeah.
not expecting big comments.
Yeah, no, I literally know nothing except what you just said. I would just say I would always view any deal that Hamas is claiming that they will stick to with a great deal of skepticism. I don't know why you would expect them to stick to this one when they haven't stuck to any other ones, but I don't know anything about the terms of this.
Anders, any quick thoughts?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Stuart, but just in general, Israel shouldn't accept any ceasefires with Hamas. They should defeat Hamas.
Absolutely. And with that, let's go to the main topic. Before we go to the first clip, Stuart, not sure how much did you get to watch of the Tucker's interview with this woman, but any thoughts, overall thoughts before we go in?
Just that Tucker is just consistently trying to prove himself to be like the world's leading anti-Semite. It seems. Having this woman on his show and spending so much time with her, it just my opinion of him was already very low, so I can't say that it made it any lower, but it's just kind of on brand for him at this point.
Anders?
Yeah, I caught a glimpse of the interview. You don't need to listen too much before you kind of get the gist of it, and then it's basically repetition in ad nauseum. I would characterize it as two useful idiots talking to one another for an hour plus. Useful idiots for any anti-Semitic cause out there. Tucker is obviously trying to drive a wedge between the evangelical Christians who support Israel and the state of Israel in order to, isolate Israel from support in the U.S. I think that's his overall purpose, and so this is just one more example of him trying to do that by bringing this. I think she Greek Orthodox or something like that, nun who for I didn't. So she's American born. We should mention that, and she has lived in this region for decades. I don't know if she actually lives on the Palestinian side or in Israel, but regardless, she's a nun there at a monastery, and she is basically, right or wrong, she's laying out the case for Christians being what's the word for it?
Persecuted.
Persecuted, I think, is a good way of saying it, by Israel, by not being allowed access to the holy sites and so on and so forth. And the whole interview is just disregarding the fact that Israel is at war with Hamas in Gaza, and right now on the West Bank they have, for the most part, I think, shut down the borders there too, because of the intermittent violence that is flaring up as with regular intervals. So Israel is in its full right to shut down the borders, and I don't know that they discriminate between Christian Palestinians and Muslim Palestinians. They're just preventing Palestinians, period, from entering Israel and accessing certain parts of that country.
Yeah, I should only quick correction. I believe she's Russian Orthodox, not Green. So part of the Russian Orthodox Church. Although, yeah, she has I think it's a Greek name. So you could say that. Now, I had a bunch of clips prepared, and we won't have time to go through all of them. So I cut a bunch of them. But I'll mention one thing I also noticed about her is every claim she made is made up. At some point, she mentioned something like IDF at some point just blew up a factory in Nablus, apparently for no reason, and haven't stated it. Apparently, it was for such a no reason that I wasn't able to find even what she was talking about. I tried to look everywhere. I couldn't find the incident, even from the sort of the propagandist. I went through the electronic intifada and I couldn't find like this incident. So there were many occasions where I think she is straight up just lying, or very much acting as one thing is something else, because again, I wasn't able to find. But okay, with that, let's listen to the first clip.
The United States is a majority Christian country that pays for a huge percentage of the Israeli economy, both through trade and direct grants and military assistance and all the rest. Israel couldn't exist without the United States. So, and it has the support of so many Christians in the United States, and I don't know if they're fully aware. I want to think they would care if they knew how the Christians are doing. And I keep reading that the Christian population in the region has declined dramatically since Israel became a state in 1948.
Right.
And I'm not quite sure why.
Well, again, I think it has to do because the whole issue is that Israel has continued to grow and think that they can dominate the Christian areas, the areas of Palestine. So they make it very difficult for anyone else to be able to live there. As simple as that.
But you would think Christians would get a special pass or dispensation because the United States is the great patron and it's a Christian country.
No, because, well, the problem you have is one with the Christian Zionists, the ones who don't recognize the Christians in the Holy Land as being fully Christian, apparently. Because why would I have a very hard time understanding why someone who calls himself a Christian and then gives money to support the building of settlements. Do we understand what that means? The settlements are in the areas of Palestine. They're taking over the land that belongs to the people of Palestine. And this has been going on, like I said, I've been there since 1996, and I've seen the continued growth of the settlement. I lived in Bethany, biblical Bethany.
Okay, so many things to cover in this first one. First, I really... It's amazing how good of a propagandist Taka Carlson is. Like how he snacks, U.S. funds Israel. First, the U.S. funding of Israel, when it comes to proportion of GDP, is less than 1%. But he sneaks in also through trade. So like trade is apparently now like a subsidy, and well, he is kind of taking that from the Trump school of economics, so it's not that surprising. But yeah, this like correlation of like trade and sending money is basically the same thing. But with that, let me jump, Anders, to you first, because you did mention it about there are when you think of Palestinians, it's not Muslims, it's Palestinian Muslims and Palestinian Arab, not Arabs, Palestinian Christians, because all of them are Arabs, and you have these two groups. And Taka Carlson brought up, well, why won't the Christians get special pass or special treatment since the patron saint of Israel is America, a Christian nation? Because why would you, if you're fighting, when we were fighting Nazi Germany, we didn't give like special pass to some parts of there. We're fighting the people, right? And in a similar way, if technically Israel is not fighting actively sort of all of the Palestinian Authority, but when fighting Hamas, when fighting Palestinians in Gaza, it's fighting Palestinians in Gaza, not Muslims in Gaza.
Yeah, I mean, this is where to start. I mean, her claim and his claim that the number of Christians in the region has decreased. Now, I don't know what the actual numbers are for Israel in absolute numbers. I'm sure
It's going up.
Okay.
Percentage-wise, it's going down. Basically,
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say, because we have a lot of influx of Jewish people into Israel. So of course the percentage is going on unless the Christians migrate to Israel as well. But how about the fact that Muslims are not necessarily that positively inclined towards Christian? So look at the surrounding countries, and there I'm pretty sure the percentage has gone down because Christians have been continuously persecuted in every Muslim country around the world. They are just smaller. They're, as a percentage of the population, also absolute numbers, it's going down. I just before we got on the air here, I saw an article that Egypt has, I think, even taken over the oldest Christian monastery in the world in the Sinai Desert, and as part of their continuous effort to encourage Christians to leave Egypt, So, but this woman, obviously, she doesn't mention any of that. This is all Israel focused.
Yeah, and to go to you, Stuart, for your comments, I'll just add one more thing she said. She also talked about she doesn't understand I think she called them the Christian Zionists who support Israel or support the settlements because it belongs to the people of Palestine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not anything resembling an expert on this, but if a lot of times what people are talking about when they talk about, the Israelis coming in and taking the land of the Palestinians, often, they're buying the land, they're settling land that is, unoccupied. Now, to the extent if Israel is coming in and actually, seizing land that belongs to Palestinians, that I don't approve of that. But again, that has to be in the wider context of what Israel is facing as a nation, just constantly under siege by every neighbor that wants them wiped off the planet. You can't ever drop that context. But of course she does. She refuses to acknowledge that context.
Let's listen to the next clip.
They don't get the concept.
What does
You're
a
only there
yellow
for 2 weeks.
license plate mean?
Yellow plate is for people who live in the state of Israel, and they can go on certain roads, all roads, and for Palestinians who have a Jerusalem ID are allowed to have a car with a yellow plate. And then Palestinians have green and white plates, and they cannot use. So over that time that I've been here, as the settlements have grown, you build the infrastructure for it. The electricity, the roads, separate roads that are used only by people that have yellow plates. As a foreigner and part of a foreign church, we were entitled to have either those, or they also have white diplomatic plates, that kind of diplomatic and religious plates that are there. So there's very much an apartheid system. Very much so. It's which gave me the freedom to help my Christian friends in Bethlehem and other places.
So here again, we're playing this like fast and loose game with apartheid, right? That basically the apparently Christians specifically, will focus on them, live under different rules. No, the Palestinian Authority, the Area A, is a different part. It's not the same country. It's a different thing. people there are not Israeli citizens. They act in a different way. You wouldn't expect a Canadian to go into America. Well, it's apartheid because Canadian doesn't have the same not the rights, but sort of same, isn't allowed the same thing as an American citizens. Well, yeah, because it's a different thing. It's a different organization. And sort of like a separate thing I would bring up, and then I'll go to you, Anders, is also that she had as part of a foreign church, she was able to get not like have a certain privileges or sort of be able to help their friends. This is usually not what happens under apartheid. It's not like black people under apartheid in let's say African Americans, when there was apartheid in South Africa, could just go into South Africa and would be like full citizens or would be able to get full citizens. No, just because they were black, they would be discriminated as everybody else. This is not what's happening with Israel. If you come to Israel and you are an Arab, Christian, Muslim, whatever, your rights will be recognized. Anders?
Yes. Now, and for the people who are on the Palestinian side of the border, on the in the West Bank, again, they're Palestinians. It doesn't matter if they're Christian or Muslims. I assume that Israel is trying to treat them in a similar fashion, which I think is valid. Now, I don't know every detail of Israel's management of the border and the people there on the other side of the border. And as Stuart brought up, that to the extent, and again, I emphasize that I may not have all the facts here, but to the extent that Palestinian private property has been taken or confiscated to be used for settlements, that sounds like that there may be some issues with that. Now, I also know that Palestinians are prevented from selling their property to Israelis. There are laws about that in the West Bank. So, this is a complicated topic. But to go from there to say that we're having apartheid is just ridiculous, right? It is trivializing the term, a term that should be reserved for what was truly going on in South Africa, and you can say in even in parts of the U.S. During the period of slavery. And even in the decades following the emancipation. But to talk about that here, I think is, it's trivializing the term.
We have a super chat from Bonnie, thank you so much, and a super chat from Shona, thank you so much. She says Israel is the only Middle Eastern country in which Christianity is growing. Well, at least when I only checked Israeli numbers, so I know it's growing there. But again, sort of like the Jewish population is rising much more. We also have a super chat from Warnath. Thank you so much. He says, the Middle East used to be Christian until it was conquered by Islamic empires who over the course of centuries dwindled the Christian population through persecution of non-Muslim as dhimmis. This none is a dhimmi. I don't know to what extent Middle East was like Christian when Christianity and Judaism were the only religions. It was kind of easier to be one of those, but I know there was a lot of like different, like before, it's not like people in the Arabian Peninsula were fully Christian. I think they were just sort of local pagan sort of like religions until sort of Islam came. But Stuart, any comments on this or what she has said?
I mean, I just to emphasize what you had said earlier, it's completely inaccurate to call, there may be injustices. I'm not denying that. Like Anders said, I haven't studied this in depth, and I would not be surprised if there are injustices. But to call it apartheid is it's simply wrong. It's apartheid is a racially based system that that's just not what's happening here. Israel is not treating its Arab citizens differently under the law. It's treating Palestinians, which are not, as you said, not Israeli citizens, in a certain way. It's just not apartheid. It may or may not be unjust, but it's not apartheid. And using that word is just trying to piggyback on people's justifiable distaste for apartheid, and borrowing that anger and that justifiable moral outrage for something that just isn't apartheid.
I mean, it's very similar to the use of genocide on the Gaza side,
It's very similar. Yes, same thing.
Yeah, and she will do so in, I think, the next couple of clips. So let's listen
sure.
to the next one.
I'll just be totally blunt with you. Most Americans are aware that there's a system, something like what you just described.
Right.
But the pretext for it, the justification for it, is that there's a lot of Islamic terrorism. There are a couple intifadas. There are a lot of suicide bombings. And it's Islamic terror. And most Americans have been taught for 25 years that Islamic terror is a threat. And, there's some truth in that, of course. But so we assume that Christians would be getting an exemption from all this. Why would Christians who are not responsible for Christian terror, there's no such thing, why would they be penalized for this? Why wouldn't they, again, when the patron saint state is majority Christian, why wouldn't the Christians there be getting some kind of special pass? I just don't understand that. Why punish the Christians for Islamic terror?
Well, first, I love Taka Carlson's, a couple of intifadas, Islamic terror, like it's like a by the way thing you mentioned. There was like thousands of people injured and killed, and it's sort of like, and it's the whole reason why we are even here. Like before the first intifada, the things were not like great, but things were sort of peaceful. If you were even a Palestinian, you were able to travel from Hebron or Nablus into Tel Aviv and work there, which was happening. And then because of the first intifada, it has changed. So to sort of like do it as like a throwaway comment again, and even his sort of like, we were taught in the last 20 years that Islamic terror is a problem. He always does that, like this. Oh, like it's like a propaganda that people do not like Islamic terrorism. And I'll bring up a few more things, but Anders, any comments?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. His style of questioning, of asking questions and commenting, it's so insinuating. I think the example you gave there, that we've been taught, as if that introduces some kind of doubt into the into the conversation that is really true, and he does this all the time, and so yeah, it's despicable, but that's Taka Carlson.
We have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. And Stuart, I would bring up one more thing. And he brought up this again, like Christians should have exception. And in this way, I would sort of like fight, like this wasn't, this whole problem isn't necessarily about Islamism. Now, Islamism is a big motivation for the Palestinian hatred of Israel, but it isn't just that, right? So why would Christians have exception if they are part of the Palestinian culture? If they are taking part, well, they are part of that sort of, not necessarily nationhood, but that sort of organization as is. So why would they be treated sort of like differently? Unless they truly were sort of like completely separate from the Palestinian culture, meaning like Christians in Gaza were trying to separate from from Hamas.
Yeah, I don't know the history there. I suspect, though, that I think there is a history of the Christian Palestinians being part of the Palestinian movement, in which case, yeah, it's like, as I think I said in last week's show, Palestinianism is a political movement. It's not an ethnic thing. It's a political thing. So if they buy into that political aspect, then of course they're going to be subject to the same restrictions and the same scrutiny that the Islamists are.
We have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. And let's listen to the next clip where she gives Tucker an answer.
Because I don't think it's Islamic terror that's taking place in the first place. I think we have to disabuse ourselves of that notion that this is a battle between Muslim and Jew, or that, constantly you heard after the October event was that Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. Even to this day, we hear it's Hamas,
Yes.
Hamas, Hamas. What is Hamas? Hamas are people who have had their homes taken from them, who, if they live in Gaza, have not been basically been in an open air prison for certainly the last 20 years going on. Even when the Israelis withdrew from Gaza, they didn't leave open borders. There was no freedom for people in Gaza to develop their economy. If I know people who wanted to try to go to school in America and couldn't get out of Gaza, had a Fulbright scholarship and weren't able to
What do
leave.
you mean couldn't get out?
Israel didn't give them permission. So what kind of freedom is that? If you live in Gaza,
They couldn't even fly out?
no. And their airport had been bombed in 2000 and early on. 2000, there was an airport built soon after the Oslo Accords, but Israel has intervened many times in Gaza and little by little destroyed. When I first went there in 2002, after the second intifada started, I remember saying to my mother back home, this is genocide, even that genocide by Chinese water torture. But now we're seeing genocide on steroids.
So here you go. We have the genocide comment as well. We also have the open air prison. When she was asked what is Hamas, she said like people whose sort of property was taken, or sort of whose houses were taken. And I'm just wondering, what is she talking about? I mean, when it comes to Gaza specifically, Israel was in control of Gaza before 2005. They were the ones who allowed the airport to be built. That was then destroyed because Palestinians started another intifada. But what is this grievance? Like, is she talking, the people from 60 years ago lost their house, so now there is Hamas? So, I mean, Anders, what are your thoughts?
I mean, this in a way doesn't even deserve commenting. We shouldn't give this woman and Tucker a platform by even talking about them. Part of me is saying, but I mean, yeah, this is so totally far from reality. I don't know if the only interesting angle of this that I can think of is she somehow representative for a group of Christians in the West Bank? Is this how they think? But I just looked up and checked the numbers, and West Bank Christians, the population has decreased continuously over the last 20, 30 years. So obviously they have a way of getting out. Yeah, otherwise, I mean, we know that Hamas is a terrorist organization. Hamas started this war. Hamas started, or Palestinians started both intifadas. And I mean, that's the bottom line of it. They started it, and Israel has reacted accordingly. Now, my criticism of Israel, and this goes back a long time, and I mentioned it here before, is that, as a Western-style welfare state based on a moral platform of altruism, they haven't done enough. And just not in this war that we're facing since almost 2 years now. This could have been over a long time ago, and the world would, to a large extent, have moved on. But in a way, you could extend it back all the way to 1973. When I think is when first international opinion started to shift from being in support of Israel to being against Israel, or maybe it was 1967. But regardless, and this woman is missing all that context. I mean, obviously an Israel-hating Russian Orthodox Christian, and that's yeah. I would be curious to know if she's representative for her flock, for her community on the West Bank, or if she's a one-off that Tucker Carlson has dug up and brought on the air.
Yeah, I mean, something separate to bring up is the way these people are talking, because something to remember is that knowledge is contextual. It's not just something you throw at the wall and like, oh, here, this is the fact, and I won't tell you anything around it. It's just the fact you have to accept. Because she's talking exactly like, oh yeah, if you are a German in 1947, it's like your country is split into four and you cannot even vote for your leaders. And it's like, well, wow, that's really extreme. What happened before, or why is this the case? But no, there is no such question here. So here she's talking, oh, you cannot even leave Gaza. Well, I'm wondering why that is. Oh, is Israel the only nation surrounding? Oh, there's also Egypt. Why is Egypt not allowing people to leave Gaza? Why? But there are no, like, she doesn't even bring that up. Like, if you don't know anything about the situation, what you're thinking about is that basically Gaza is like Lesotho in South Africa or something, just completely surrounded by all of Israel and completely controlled. But no, there is another border. But of course, she doesn't answer it. Stuart?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to bring up the Egypt thing. I mean, it's so incredibly dishonest. And I would be curious to know how representative she is, but if she's at all representative of Christian Palestinians, then it is no mystery to me why they're not given the special dispensation that Tucker seems to think they're entitled to. She clearly shares the same prejudices, the same anti-Israel hatred. So of course they're going to be treated as other Palestinians. It's just
yeah, that's a good point, Stuart. I mean, she's actually making the case why they shouldn't be treated differently through her conversation.
Exactly. She's spewing the same propaganda. So why should her group get a special treatment?
Yeah.
Okay, let's listen to another clip, which I think might be the one I mentioned earlier. Oh, actually, I don't have this one. Okay, let's watch this one.
Trying to protect their land. And I don't know if we want to reach into the area of the whole problem is that it was never defined what Palestine is. You know, the Oslo Accords took place, and then there was nothing to, there was area A, B, and C. And you didn't have a Palestine. So little by little, Israel just keeps taking over the land, like confiscating, building the settlements, adding the checkpoints, and strangling the life of anybody living there.
So again, this is the same kind of like context dropping here, right? Like, you had the Oslo Accords. We don't explain what they are. Apparently, like the way she explained Oslo Accords is basically UN partition. Like, oh, this happened, nothing happened before, this has happened, and since then Israel has been taking land. No, Israel used to control all of it. Israel was in complete charge of everything. Oslo Accords gave some part of it to the Palestinian Authority, to the representative of the Palestinians. And again, I just quickly looked up a bit more about how it was after 67 and before the first Intifada. And as I've said, if you were a Palestinian, you were a permanent resident. So you were not a citizen, you didn't have the voting rights because you just fought a war against the country that you are now a part of. But basically, if you lived in Hebron, if you lived in, as she said, Nablus or Jenin or whatever, you could go and work in Tel Aviv. You could freely move, I think it was called something like open bridge policy. You could freely move to Jordan also. That used to be your country. You could freely move across the whole region. And that stopped, and people worked everywhere, and that stopped when the first Intifada happened. So, I mean, Anders, any more comments? Because it's pretty much the same old lies.
Right. Yeah. No, and back to my criticism of Israel for not having done enough. I think signing the Oslo Accords was a big mistake in the first place. And I've long been an advocate for Israel occupying the West Bank, occupying Gaza, and slowly start to westernize those areas, implement property rights, remove the rules preventing Palestinians from selling to Israelis, and protect them if they do. And I mean, not forcing them, of course, but that trajectory that the region was on before the Oslo Accords that you mentioned, with people moving relatively freely across the borders. I mean, by now the region could have been an integrated country where, just like you have millions of Arabs, Muslims living in Israel today, it could just been a little bit more and with more territory. But we know what the goal is of the radical Islamists on the Palestinian side, Hamas included, and that is from the river to the sea. So clear the region of Israelis, of Jews. And for as long as that is a living hope for them, there won't be any peace.
Yeah, I mean, Stuart, similar to the Six-Day War, I'm a big believer in preemptive strikes. And I think if you want to speak truth, preemptive strikes are good for you. And what I mean by that is basically preempt any criticism that you think might be towards your position. Because if you are knowledgeable about a subject, you know what are like the common sort of like people that speak out against you, and you can sort of answer that before you even get asked about it. So your argument is stronger. But she is actively omitting like clear things people would bring up, hoping that people who are listening to her don't know anything. Because if you don't know anything, you just accept it, right? Like she is saying that, well, I'm just gonna take it for what it is. So yeah, I mean, Stuart, any more comments on this?
I mean, her comments are similar to a lot of comments that you hear. And there's criticism, Israel did this, Israel did that. And you can easily get into a back and forth. Well, Israel did this because the Palestinians did that. And, you can go back literally thousands of years doing, well, he responded to this and they really, I mean, everything is a response to these people. But what never gets discussed, and what I think needs to be discussed, is just the fundamental question of who is entitled to a state, who is entitled to form a government, and what is the proper nature of a government. And that's why, when people, I talk to so many people that are like, well, it's just, you've got to look at both sides. Israel has points, but Palestinian, this kind of even-handed thing. And I always get back to the fact, okay, what does Israel as a government want? And essentially, although they've made a lot of, they are a Western government. Their fundamental goal, to some extent at least, is protecting the individual rights of their people. And if you look at what the Palestinians want in a state, it's the destruction of Israel, first of all, but it's also, this kind of theocratic, very similar to Iran, an incredibly repressive, oppressive state. So to me, that's what we need to do to cut through all of this. He said, she said, and he did this, and Israel did that, and back and forth, back and forth. How can anyone know who's really in the right? I think you just need to go back to the essentials. What is a government for, and what government are each of these sides advocating?
Yeah, I was just trying to look up a clip because something you mentioned reminded me of something. But okay, let's listen to the next clip, and there's about 25% chance that it's the one I want to comment on because of something you brought up.
Have you, a lot of Christians in the Holy Land. How many support the government of Israel? Do you know?
The Palestinians within Israel?
Yeah, Christians. support the government of Israel?
I can't. I don't know that they would be any that really would. What's the especially now? I mean, they're literally throwing out Palestinian representatives.
So in the U.S., there's a sense that Christians support this program.
Of course not. And to the, when I first moved there in '98, there was hope for peace, and there was a much stronger peace movement within Israel. People who recognized not just a cold peace, but that we can live together, and we should work towards that.
So, yeah, something you mentioned, I found this interesting because Taka asked, well, how many Christians support Israel? And she said none. And that is kind of an interesting question. So I looked into it in sort of who do Christians in Israel proper vote for? And of course, they are Christian Arabs. So who they vote for? They vote for Arabic parties that are absolutely anti-Zionist, that are absolutely calling for the destruction of Israel. Parties like Ra'am or Hadash-Tal, who, some of them are straight up Islamists. So many of the Christians actually do vote for Islamist party, and many vote for just, only the communist parties, so a little bit less destructive to the Israeli state, but not by that much. And actually, very few Christians, usually the sort of the Russian, the Russian Christians that immigrated, are the ones that do vote for something you could call a Zionist party. So again, you have another example where she is sort of like giving a credence to why Israel would want to be a bit more suspicious of the local Christian population, because they are actively trying to, even through the democratic means, destroy the Israeli state. Now, that doesn't, since they are citizens in Israel proper, obviously you don't go and persecute them, and it's not what Israel is doing. Again, I mean, Anders, any thoughts from you on this?
Yeah, just to clarify, so you're saying that based on what you found, that Israeli Arab Christians are...
Well, most Christians are Arabs in Israel.
Yeah, but they are predominantly voting for the Arab parties in Israel. Okay, so that means that they are predominantly identifying themselves ethnically before they religiously, right? So they are Arabs first, Christians second.
Kind of, but there are no, at least to my understanding, there are no like Christian parties in Israel. So the minority that do not identify themselves with sort of like the Arab parties do just vote for like Likud or like I said, there's one like Russian party or the Liberal Party. So yeah, but predominantly the Arabic parties.
Yeah. Okay. So well, yeah, as you said, I mean, that is giving credence to Israel's equal treatment of Palestinian Christians and Muslims on the West Bank in terms of, access possibilities to getting into Israel and whatever else other interactions they have.
Stuart, any comments on this?
I would be curious, maybe I'll look it up. Tucker says that, Christian Palestinians have, don't engage in terrorism. I wonder if that's really true if you go back. I mean, obviously, most of the region is Islamic terrorism, but I wonder, because it sounds like they are every bit as anti-Israel and anti-Semitic as the Muslims are pretty close. So I mean, I now, after hearing all this, it's no mystery to me why Israel treats them the same.
Yeah, I'll try to quickly ask ChatGPT. Maybe it will refresh my memory on something I've read up. But let's, we have kind of on time, so let's go to the next clip.
I mean, I'm sure you've dealt with Hamas or know people who, right? Are they religious fanatics? Are they jihadis?
not the people that I know. Like I said, when I was again in at the school, we had a couple teachers, Muslim men, and there were some elections going on. And it wasn't Hamas then. It was the social party or something. It was definitely a Muslim religious party. I would have voted for those guys because they weren't corrupt. They wanted to serve their people, and that's what it was about. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen anywhere. I'm not totally ingrained in the community, but the vibe there isn't one of wanting everybody to convert to Islam and forcing it upon them at all. And the purpose of Hamas is primarily to resist and to protect their people and their land.
So again, this is, I don't know what to call this type of thing. I sometimes even hear it from like Trump, saying like, oh, Putin loves his people, or Kim Jong-un like loves his people. And there is this like weird, like what are you even trying to say? Because she said, Hamas is this like, or the sort of the party similar to Hamas was this like party that was against corruption. So, okay, so let's assume that Hamas was this anti-corruption party, Fatah was this corruption party and Hamas was this anti-corruption party. So now after we know that Hamas is stealing aid, Hamas has been using vehicles and hospitals to fight from there, Hamas has been killing their own people because they do not support them anymore. Does the support for Hamas go away since, apparently they are losing that that anti-corruption thing? No, it's still there. So again, obviously you're lying. Obviously there is something different about Hamas that brings in the Palestinian support. Anders?
Yeah, I think, I really don't have any comments on this one. What she was saying there. So I think I punt and let Stuart.
Sure, Stuart?
I mean, she's just so incredibly dishonest. Her statement about what the purpose of Hamas is leaves out the destruction of Israel, which I'm pretty sure is explicitly part of what they want. But she's like, oh, it's to protect their people. It's like, yeah, that's clearly not the case, because they put their people up as human shields. So, she's just lying. And of course, Tucker doesn't call her on it.
Just quickly, a really good bring in from ChatGPT. The PFLP, first it says the Palestinian Christians joined secular left-wing factions that carried out Israeli attacks. Predominantly the PFLP, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which was founded and long led by George Habash, a Greek Orthodox Christian. So, I'm wondering what are the ties here. And also the longtime leader of the FLP, which is, I think, the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, has also long been led by Naif Havatmeh, who is also a Christian. So it seems like they do have at least some hand in the terrorism as well.
I thought so.
Not surprised.
Let's listen to one more. By the way, whenever I hear like the PFLP, the DFLP, the DFF, I always think of the People's Front of Judea versus Judea's People's Front. But let's listen to the next clip.
Palestine and Israel, where the Christian population has shrunk, it seems like throughout the Levant.
Yes, and I think that's part of the whole Greater Israel project. Isn't it so ironic that they've made such a big
targeting Christians?
Targeting Christians, yeah. Well, targeting to make control for Israel, for example, in Syria. I went to Syria in 2004, and I went to the convent of St. Thecla, where outside of Damascus, in Malula, where the nuns were kidnapped by ISIS, right? And the population is over 10% Christian, and you have ancient Christian sites, as well as vibrant monastic communities there and vibrant churches and hospitals that were run by the church in Syria and Lebanon, right? And now, what have we done? And so Assad wasn't perfect. Saddam Hussein wasn't perfect. But the Middle East is not the United States. And we tried to impose ourselves there and get rid of these governments who, for all the repression, also kept the people together, allowed minorities to survive there.
Including Christians.
Including Christians, yeah. And Christians, yeah. And just recently, and so I find it mind-boggling that now we take sanctions off after Assad is gone, and we put in place someone who was Daesh, who was part of ISIS. Does a leopard change its spots?
Yeah, I'm not going to defend the new so-called leader of Syria, but sort of like two comments. First, like the way people talk about Greater Israel is like, oh, that's and I think Ayatollah Khamenei just talked about it like today or yesterday on X about this Greater Israel from Nile to Euphrates, or however you pronounce that other river. And it's like, when is this plan supposed to happen? In like next 10,000 years? Like Israel is moving so even when you take Syria, right? Golan Heights were taken back in 67, and now recently they've taken like a little bit of strip of land on the border of the Golan Heights that will most likely be given away if there ever is a normalization deal with Syria. So at what point is Israel supposed to achieve this Greater Israel project? And also I love her way of describing Assad and Saddam Hussein. They weren't perfect. Yeah, that's one way of describing those brutal dictators. Anders?
Yeah, no, here I actually wish she were right. I would love to see a Greater Israel project. I wrote an article about what I call the United States of the Levant, where I kind of hypothesized that Israel should take control of the West Bank and Gaza, southern Lebanon, southern Syria, to start with. And then, really focus on creating a Western state in that region that can serve as an example for everybody else. And as other countries realize the success of this, they can join. And the Israeli project, the United States of the Levant, can keep expanding, protecting individual rights, religious freedom, and yeah, it's Pollyanna-ish. I realize that, but in this case, I wish there were a Greater Israel project, as she insinuates.
Stuart, any comments on that?
Yeah, I'm with Anders. I think that would be great, but clearly she's delusional. That is not what's happening.
And with that, I think we have one last clip, so let's go into that.
2 million people who live in Gaza.
Well, I can't say that I'm a Trump fan, but he's a wheeler dealer. He wants to get that Nobel Peace Prize. He's got people with a lot of money in Saudi Arabia and Qatar that have his ear. We don't have to build a Riviera. Build it for the Palestinians. They go and rebuild the area and let it be and reconstruct for a Palestinian nation. Why is that such an outrageous idea? Why does Israel think that the people of Palestine have to be their enemy? They say, go to Jordan, go to Egypt. What's the difference another 20 kilometers in? That's really what we're talking about. The difference between Amman and Tel Aviv is 20 miles at the most to drive between the two. So what are the difference between the people that live in Palestine, that live in Jericho and Bethlehem, and someone who lives in Amman? And what's the difference between someone who lives in Gaza? So give them a defined border and have the people of other countries, the Arabs too, should support the rebuilding of Gaza and have Israel remove their military from there and let Gaza have their freedom to be able to develop. Those people, there are some of the most educated people in Gaza. I mean, how many of us have read, I hope, the stories of Mossab Abu Toha or Rifat, who was killed, the poet? Beautiful, graceful people. Bisan Oda now, who's on every day on, maybe not everybody sees her, not in the mainstream media, but these are beautiful young Palestinians who are still trying to live and have joy and see something beautiful in the midst of all their suffering.
Yeah, so this is what we'll wrap up with. Again, such a weird thing. Like, what is the difference between the people? Well, one people are trying to actively kill you, and the other one don't. Yeah, that's the difference. I don't know. Like, what else do you want me to say? Like, this is what's happening on the ground. People in Gaza are actively have committed October 7, are actively still fighting against the Israeli state, and people in Egypt are not. They were in the past, and in the past, Israel was fighting them. Similarly, that they are fighting Gaza. So again, I don't know what else to tell you. Anders?
Yeah, no, I mean, the Palestinians have admirably proven over and over and over again that they don't want to be friends with Israel, right? So, of course, Israel has taken, I would argue, not enough measures against them. And the second point I wanted to make was, and now it escaped me, what did she say? Yeah, and yes, they have been offered over and over again. I mean, I'm against Palestinian statehood. Period. I don't think it will work. But in all these international agreements, they have been offered over and over again a Palestinian state, and every time they have rejected it. And every time that state is getting smaller and smaller. But yeah. So I mean, so she's obviously totally rewriting or neglecting historical facts here in her articulation of her support for the Palestinians.
Stuart, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, her dishonesty is just staggering. Oh, she makes it out like, oh, the Palestinians, all they just want is to, live their lives in peace. They could have done that in 1948. I mean, they were offered a state when Israel was made a state. I mean, that was part of the initial plan, and they rejected it then. They've been rejecting it ever since. She's just creating this completely false narrative, and I don't think Tucker calls her on it. I'm sure he doesn't.
We have a super chat from Dan. Thank you so much. Oh, and one more super chat from Dan that I missed. So first, he said, the kidnapped, forcibly converted Coptic Christian girls and their parents in Egypt will testify on who enforces apartheid, Israeli Jews or Muslims. Yeah, I haven't not fully read on this, but yeah, I know that definitely was a big Christian sort of population in Egypt, and I'm not very sure what's happening to it now. I mean, across all of Middle East, as people have said. We have one more super chat from Dan. He says, Israel should demand legalization of gay marriage, trans surgeries in Palestine as a precondition for creation of the Palestinian state. Problem solved. I didn't know gay marriage was legal in Israel, but if it is, that's pretty that's good. So with that, Anders, any last thoughts from you, and where can people find you?
You can find me on Substack, andersingemarson.substack.com, and my book, Think Right or Wrong, Not Left or Right, is available on Amazon.
And Stuart, any more comments on the super chats, and where can people find you?
I'm at Stuart. I'm also on Substack, stuartmargolis.substack.com. I'm also on Facebook. I do not have a book, unfortunately, but I recommend Andrew's book. But in terms of the last comments, she's not the only one doing it. It's this creation of a false narrative about the Palestinians is ongoing, and it needs to be called out whenever we see it, because if she were right, if the Palestinians really did just want to live in peace and be productive people, that would be a whole different world that we'd be inhabiting. It's not factually true.
Okay, just checking the marriage status in Israel. So it looks like same-sex marriages performed outside of Israel are recognized since 2006, and same-sex unions inside of Tel Aviv are recognized since 2020. But yeah, one specific thing why I was wondering is because the only marriage that is legal in Israel are religious marriages. Basically, there is no way to get married without it being, well, I think without having sort of what you call them, the
A rabbi or
rabbi, yeah. Because I think I have a friend that is actually going through this, and he said that, yeah, basically it has to be religious. Although any marriages are recognized if they happen outside, so you can like, it's still a bit annoying, but as any country, Israel is still a religious country. We can work on that after we get rid of not get rid of the Palestinian population, get rid of the Palestinian culture that is actively calling for the destruction of Israel, and then we can fight the religious mystics in Israel. With that, thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you everybody for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Objective and the reality show. Until then, bye bye.